the thing that I have so much trouble remembering. So I'm Michelle Gooch, if you don't know me, the managing director of Plaid for Women and your empowerment coach. I'm happy you're here today. As I was saying earlier, I love Women's History Month. I love March. I'm always reading every story I can get my hands on about the women that have come before us, which I guess is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing for me because I get inspired and excited and motivated and grateful. But then I tell those stories to everybody I run into. So it might be a curse for them. I'm like, guess who I read about today? So I love March. So thank you for joining us. Plaidforwomen.com is an award-winning, if you don't already know this, an award-winning digital media platform for women. We're like mentors in your inbox. So a feature article shows up every week that will inspire and empower you. And if you aren't receiving those, you'll hopefully start receiving those next week. At Plaid, we understand all of us need to be empowered. And in order to do that, we need support, we need encouragement, we need enlightenment. And the problem for most of us, especially women, is that when we get pushed up against a wall, we don't know what to do next, and we start to doubt ourselves. Is that self-doubt is a big thing among women. So at Plaid, we just believe everyone deserves access to mentors who are pouring into you support, encouragement, enlightenment. And we know how it feels, every one of us, every contributor, every author, every writer, everybody involved in Plaid knows what it feels like to doubt yourself, which is why the writers at plaidforwomen.com pour out their hearts and souls each month to empower us. So today we are going to start with an empowering story by an energetic, passionate storyteller, Terrhonda Hillman, and she is also one of the authors on the Plaid for Women site. So you can find her there. You can find her bio there, but I want to just tell you that she is a serial entrepreneur. She's an author of a recently released book called The Daughter of the Other Woman. She's a playwright and an actress. You are going to love her. And among the many ways that she empowers women, she is also a speech coach, someone who, if you were called on to deliver a keynote or to provide some kind of presentation, she's someone that can give you extra support in writing it or in presenting it. She can help you with that. So Terrhonda is coming to us this morning from years gone by, a woman in our history, and she's going to embody her and impress us with her story. So I'm going to hand it over and let Terrhonda take it from here. You'll need to unmute because for some reason you're muted.
Well, children, where there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that between the Negroes of the South and the women of the North are all talking about rights that the white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and given the best place everywhere. Nobody's helped me into carriages or lifted me over mud puddles or given me any best place. Ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns. And no man could head me. I can work as much as a man and eat as much too, when I could get it. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? They ain't talking about this thing in your head. What's the thing? What's the thing? That's right, honey. They talk about this thing in your head, and what's that got to do with Negroes' rights and women's rights? If my cup only holds a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't it be just mean for you not to let me get my little half measure full? And then that little man in black over there, that little man in black, he said that women shouldn't get the same rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? He came from God and a woman. Man didn't have nothing to do with him. If the first woman that God ever made was able to turn the world upside down all alone, then these women together ought to be given the opportunity to turn the world right side up again. And they ask him to do it. The men better let them. Much obliged to you hearing from me. Now, old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say. I gave that speech in 1851 at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. I must say that I am so honored to be here with you. I have a very, very important message to bestow upon you today, and it is what carried me all of the years of my life. I come here to tell you simple things that is already in your heart. The first is that God is real. The second is that prayer is very important and it works if you use it. And the third is that when you serve others, God will serve you. I came to this earth around 1797. And I say around because in that time they didn't keep track of the births of the slave babies. And as a small girl, my mom, Mama Bet, used to tell me that prayer is so important. See, I had yet to be whipped by a master or sold away from my family, and I had no idea of such. But Mama Bet had seen most of all of her children sent to the auction block and sold away. Sometimes I would catch Mama Bet crying and I would ask why she was crying. And she would tell me that she was yearning for all of her children. Her and my daddy, who I called Pop, would often tell stories of their children who were never to be seen again. They would laugh and then they would cry. I never could understand how the white people or our oppressors couldn't see that we all was human beings. Worse than the lashes that no slave was spared from, I have, as many others of us, were whipped until the flesh tore from our bones. And I can't tell you of the pain. But what was worse was watching a man being stripped of his manhood. You could see exactly when a man was broken because it was like you could see his soul leave his body. He was left empty, no more than a living corpse standing before you. His spirit was gone. After seeing this time and time again, I knew I had to do something. And then I started hearing from God. It was soon after the worst whipping I'd ever gotten. I had already been sold away from Mama Bet and Pop. But in that moment, I remembered Mama Bet telling me to pray. And I did just that. In that moment, I knew God heard me because I felt nothing but peace and love. I couldn't even feel the pain from the fresh open wounds on my back. When you're a slave, your mind is stolen from you. You think everything your master says is true, but they lies all the time. My master promised me freedom after I worked hard for years. And when the time came for him to grant my freedom, he reneged on that promise. So I planned my escape. By that time, I had bore several children, but I could only take one with me. I had a baby girl, and I was going to leave and take her with me. And one night I prayed, asking God when I should leave, and he instructed me to leave at dawn, just as day broke. And I did just that. I put my baby girl on my hip and I walked away. Just like that, I was free. But in all my planning, I forgot to plan where I would go. So I did what I knew how to do best. I prayed to God for help. I asked for a family, a kind family that would take me and my child in, and God heard me and led me to the Van Wagenens. This was in 1826. Isaac and Maria Van Wagenen were Quakers and people of God. They treated me and my child with so much love and kindness. They respected me and was extremely impressed with my courage. But I knew that my owner would one day find me. And when he did, the Van Wagenens bought me and my child for $25. But they refused to let me refer to them as master and mistress. In their eyes, I was free. I no longer had to fear, but my heart and mind was still on my children and the other enslaved people. That is when I learned of my son, my 5-year-old son, being illegally sold out of the state of New York to Alabama. I knew I had to do something, but what could I do? I couldn't read or write. The reason this was so crucial was because New York emancipated all slaves in 1827, but the law required all of my children to continue to work for the current slave master until they was in the 20s. Alabama had not emancipated their slaves, and my 5-year-old boy would not be given his freedom. My friends, the Van Wagenens, paid for me a lawyer, and I went to court. I was the first Black woman to file suit against a white person, and I won. I was the first Black woman to ever file a case, a lawsuit, and to win against a white person. I got my son back. Soon after this, I chose to preach the word of God across the country, convincing everyone of the wrongfulness of slavery. God honored me, and I was often used to speak before those and speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Most other Black abolitionists only spoke to other Black folk, but I found my place speaking to the white folk. A lot of people didn't understand that, but you got to be there to tell these people of the wrong that some of them are doing. I fought for the Negroes and women, both to whom I was a member of. During the American Civil War, in my commitment to the Union forces and what they stood for, I recruited many Black troops for the Union Army. I worked for the National Freedmen's Relief Association, helping to create programs that help thousands of African Americans. I even met the president, President Abraham Lincoln. I was able to talk to President Lincoln about my life as a slave. I've worked with several abolitionists, such as Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison. I even won another court case. You see, I just wanted to come to you today just to tell you that whatever it is you want to do in your life, you can do it. I was just a poor little slave girl. But God heard my prayers, see? And I need you to know that God hears your prayers and he answers them too. But you gotta use it. Much obliged to have you hear from me. And now, old Sojourner don't have nothing left to say.
Thank you. That's awesome. So Sojourner Truth is, her story is remarkable. She was so fierce and fearless. And you think when you hear one piece of her story, that's enough, but it just keeps going, keeps going, and keeps going. She, of course, was remembered as the foremost leader of the abolition movement and an early advocate of women's rights, but she didn't live to see women get the right to vote. In fact, it was like 4 decades later when women got the right to vote. So she was fighting for it early. Terrhonda, thank you. That was awesome.
She was 6 feet tall.
Was she?
She was 6 feet
I didn't
tall.
know that.
Yes.
I love her story. So you guys unmute yourself. Tell me let me hang on just a minute. Let me pause this recording.